Thank you very much. I was listening to Dr. Kim's introduction. I thought she was talking about my whole life. And I was going to talk about my life as a grandpa. Next year I'm going to become 90 years old. So,
USA age.
And I have 3 grandchildren at home. So I'm your grandpa, grandpa, perhaps. And thank you for your introduction. I don't know whether I belong to Scranton or I belong to Ewha.
You belong to Scranton.
And I taught at I've been professor of Ewha Women's University from 1964 until 1996. So I am a professor emeritus, retired professor of Ewha. So when I graduated from Ewha in 1996, president of Ewha gave me a little honorary degree. Instead of an honorary degree, she said, I grant you a degree of honorary woman. I've been teaching at Ewha more than 30 years, so they think I talk like a woman, act like a woman, and think like a woman, and so on and so forth. So I belong to both Ewha Women's University as a professor and as a member of the board of directors of Scranton. And Dr. Kim and I started this program of leadership program to give scholarships to Asian students, not men, only women, female students. And then 5 years ago, we decided to bring these brilliant scholarship students, female students from all over Asia to come to Korea to see who is the Scranton and who is the disciples of Scranton to create this kind of program. So I'm so happy to see you all. And I had the chance to visit almost all of your countries except Vietnam. Where is Vietnam? Cambodia. Yeah. These 2 countries I was not able to visit, but all the others, Philippines, Indonesia, India, Myanmar, what else? Pakistan and Korea, so on. So this is 1 o'clock after your good lunch. I'm sure you are sleepy. And when I talk to my grandchildren at the bedside, I tell them Grandpa's old stories. You know, when I was 10 years old, and then they listen. When I was 15 years old, they became sleepy. And then I couldn't finish my story because they all started sleeping. So when you listen to the grandpa's old story, and after lunchtime, so sleepy, it's okay for you to go to sleep. And according to the Bible, it's the best time for you to listen to God's voice when you sleep. So in the dreams, you listen to God's stories. So when I speak Grandpa's old stories while you are dreaming, okay? And in order for you to wake up for a moment, I'll give you some quizzes, some questions of history. Table 2, table 1, table 3, table 4. So I'll start from world history. Anybody, what happened in 1493?
Is that the year?
Louder. Louder.
Is that the year Columbus
Wow.
discovered America?
Yes. Did you hear the answer? Columbus. Okay.
Wasn't it like 1492 instead?
Okay, 92, 93, somewhere there. Okay, once again, table 1, 1517, celebrated 500 years of 1517. What?
Reformation.
Martin Luther made his thesis.
Who's Reformation?
Martin Luther, Protestant Reformation.
Very good. Martin Luther's the Reformation. Martin Luther, what did he do? What did he say?
He nailed his thesis, 94 thesis, on the doors of churches. He was protesting against the sale of indulgence, and the sale of indulgence, and he was also about this. He was protesting against sale of indulgence and brought about Reformation.
He did two important things. One is translation of Bible. Well, from what language?
German.
From Latin to German, so that people can read the Bible. That's a very important thing. And second one is, his slogan was priesthood of all believers, not just a man. Certain people become priests and have a direct the connection with the God, but everyone, anybody who reads the Bible and believes in Jesus Christ and believes in God, they would be called priests. That means everyone, men and women, they all can have a direct relationship with God. That is the priesthood of all believers. These two things. The first, Bible translation, so that people can read and write. So that means the public education started. Martin Luther started public education. And second is the equality of all people. Priests, or all the believers, non-believers, women and men. These are very, very revolutionary ideas. Okay, I'll jump to table 3. Where is table 3? 1789.
French Revolution.
Wow. How come everybody knows? Good answer. 1789 is the French Revolution, democratic revolution. No more kings, queens can rule. The people can rule for themselves. So connection between 1517 and 1789 is this 1789. The idea of French Revolution came from Martin Luther's idea of equality of all men and women. Priests or non-priests, everybody is equal under God. And because of the translation of the Bible, the European people in French, German, and English, they all were able to speak their own language. They can read their own Bible. So education became the idea of democracy. So the French Revolution, 1789. Okay. Anybody, 18? Great Britain, Germany, 18. So we can talk about French Revolution, 18th century, and then we come into 19th century. What is the important characteristic of 19th century? How do you call? What's the name of the 19th century? And the time of enlightenment. And you said industrial revolution. What's the characteristic of industrial revolution? Why industrial? See, religious reformation and French Revolution and industrial revolution. All these revolution, industrial revolution. What happened in the industrial revolution? Table 4. What happened? Industrial revolution. Go ahead. No consultation. It's a quiz show.
When it comes to India, can I say it from that perspective? Great India Company came to India, and that's 16?
Yeah, before that,
okay.
Before the colonization, what happened in terms of science and technology?
Laborers fought for their labor work.
Okay. Anybody else?
Factories and industries increased.
What?
Industrial revolution actually means that the number of industries went up, the machines started coming up to make the work easier. So lots of factories and came up.
Okay. In 1492, when Columbus went to try to discover India, but instead of India, it's discovered East India, which is American continent, right? And when he was going to America, by what? From Spain? How did he go to American continent? Steamboat, right? Steamboat? No. Yeah, ship. By what's the energy? The wind, right? Sailing boat. But Industrial Revolution discovered what? The boat from wind sailing to how? After Industrial Revolution, how did they travel? By engine, steam engine. Steam engine for the boat and steam engine for what? Another transportation. Train. These are two things that made the whole world change. Train, boat, and also 1492, the discovery of Gutenberg. What did they do? The printing machine. And also from China, they imported what? The firecrackers. From firecrackers, what did they invent? The gun. Steamboat, railroad, guns, and books. They started what? Colonialism. They started colonies. So British started to go to India from beginning establishment of East India Company, 1600. So from the Christians, the religious Reformation to French Revolution and 18th century, 19th century Industrial Revolution, the colonialism, the British started to invade India and Netherlands, Holland, Indonesia, and French to Vietnam, Cambodia, and so by the end of the 19th century, the colonialism was established, and Opium War in China, and the only country that is not colonized by the West, that is French, British, Germany, or Netherlands, the European countries, was Korea. Korea was colonized by which country? Japan. It was from 1894, Korea, the Japanese came to Korea to occupy the Korean peninsula. 1848 is the date of Communist Manifesto. Communist Manifesto, author was Karl Marx. So communism, capitalism, colonialism, imperialism, and so on and so forth. So 19th century is the beginning of Industrial Revolution, colonialism, and the invasion of Western countries. Almost all of you are the people being colonized by the West, colonized by the European countries. That is a characteristic of 19th century. Now, 20th century, when was the First World War began? 1914. Ended?
1918.
And the 1919, what happened? Russian Revolution, the Communist Revolution. That's the First World War. the end of the First World War, there was a communist revolution in Russia. And 1941, what happened? 1941. Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. That's the Second World War. Hawaii was attacked by Japanese. So we call it also Pacific War, because Hawaii is located right in the middle of Pacific Ocean. So we call it Second World War and Pacific War for us. So that's 1941. And 1945, so many things happened, but August 6th, Hiroshima, the first what? What happened? Hiroshima. First atomic bomb. Just one single atomic bomb dropped. And August 9th, 3 days later, Nagasaki, small island southwest of Japan. That was first atomic bomb dropped on Asia. On Asia, they invented atomic bomb already before the Germany surrendered. But American airplanes, American president did not drop the atomic bomb on the Germany, but where? Japan, on the Asians. I don't know why, but you know why. Because, and you can explain that, but Americans don't want to hear that. Why you did not drop the atomic bomb, the first terrible bomb on the white people in Germany, but why did you have to drop that atomic bomb on yellow people, Asians? Oh, we don't know. Japanese are bad, that's why. That's the only answer. Yeah. 1945, August 8, 6, and 9. August 8th, Russians, Soviet, they invaded Manchuria, north of Korea. I was 15 years old, middle school boy. And we lived, thank you. When I talk about atomic bomb, I become excited and angry. And I was with the middle school kids. I was a Korean boy studying in a Japanese middle school with the Japanese kids. We all went up to the hills and we dug the ground. And the Russian tanks are coming down from north. And if we have all these holes which we dig, then Russian tanks might fall in to these holes. That's the idea. But the Japanese kids and myself are laughing. And teachers are very serious. We are going to make Russian tanks go into these holes, and they cannot move. And we were saying, really? And the holes that we are digging, and the Russian tanks are going in. Wow. We don't believe it, but we have to dig. And 15th of August, the teacher said, all line up. Attention. So we all lined up. And our teacher turned on radio, shortwave radio, and listened to radio. And exactly 12 noon of 15th of August, 1945, there was a voice from radio. Very old man's voice, like my voice now, and whispering, we surrendered to American army, and thus ended in the Second World War, Pacific War. Did you hear me? And Japanese kids started weeping. We lost the war. And teacher started weeping too. So now the war ended, and we lost the war. So now we all go home and pack up and then go back to Japan. A Korean boy, what should I do? Should I weep? And my father was an anti-Japanese preacher, and he was preaching almost every Sunday that God is going to be on our side, Korean side, and Japanese are going to lose the war and we will be liberated. And the following day, the Japanese police comes to pick up my father and beat him up. What did you say? Japan is going to lose the war and you will be liberated? What kind of anti-Japanese preacher are you? And he was persecuted. And all the Korean Christians under Japanese, the colonialism, we were persecuted like that. Under Japanese, the Japanese war crimes, they drafted the beautiful Korean girls, including Ewha Women's University students, to go to war, become comfort women. And Japanese drafted the Korean young people to go to war and fight for Japanese against the American soldiers. And the Korean workers were drafted to go to Japan, and they were forced to work in the mines, coal mines, steel mines, in small islands, big islands. Like in Nagasaki, there were so many Korean laborers working in the Japanese factories, especially war factories. When I went to Japanese elementary school, I had to speak Japanese. In Korean, students cannot speak Korean at all in the school. If you speak Korean at school, you will be punished. So we have to speak Japanese. We have to act like a Japanese. And some people want to be like a Japanese and dress like a Japanese and talk like a Japanese and so on and so forth. We are forced to become Japanese, lose Korean identity. And they changed even Korean names. You know, my Korean name is So Kwang-Sun, one Chinese character of a family name, and Kwang-Sun, given name by the family. And the Japanese forced us to change our names into Japanese style. I hate my Japanese name, so I won't tell you what my Japanese name was. And then the Japanese government asked all the Christians and Korean students to go to Japanese Shinto shrine, and we have to go up to the shrine where the Japanese ghosts, the war ghosts, were celebrated. We have to go there, bow down 3 times, 90 degrees, 3 times, and then clap hands 3 times, and then we do it. And Japanese ghosts. So my father said, don't bow down in front of a Japanese ghost. So once went up to the mountain, and all the other students who are doing this, I was wham! My Japanese teacher hit my neck, bow down. So I had to not, what do you mean? I just bow down. I had to fall down flat. This was the way Japanese government forced the Koreans to become slaves, mentally, physically slaves. Now you know why the Koreans people are against the Japanese doing. Abe, we are talking about compensation of these forced laborers, also comfort women issues, and Japanese don't like it, especially the Prime Minister. See, inside out, I was educated on the Japanese school, Japanese people, but inside out, this old man is full of anger against Japanese. I can speak Japanese much better than Japanese kids. So even today, I go to Japan, my professor friends ask me to come talk about my life under Japanese. And I insist that I speak in Japanese. No, David, please tell us in English. We can translate your English into Japanese. And I said, no, I want to speak in Japanese. Japanese, so that I can tell the Japanese young people that your ancestors forced Koreans to speak Japanese, forced that I'm able to speak Japanese. So I have to show that how much your ancestors hated, oppressed, and persecuted Koreans. 1945, wow. The kids, Japanese kids are crying, and we lost the war. We have to go back to Japan. And the teacher said goodbye. Everybody, sayonara, goodbye. And then they were all coming down the hill, and I had to run down. And I cannot weep. I just want to say, forever we are liberated, and came down home. My father was waiting for me, and with the tears, he said, we are liberated. Japanese lost the war. Now we can go home to Korea. There was a moment of feeling of liberation. We are liberated from the Japanese slavery. Now we can be independent. We can have our own country. We can have our government. We can have our own president and so on. And we all packed up and then took a train to return home. That was 1945. We thought we are liberated. Koreans are liberated from Japanese colonialism. But when we returned home, we learned, we heard, we were told that Korea was divided. 1945, North and South. Vietnam, who is from Vietnam? Can you tell us why Vietnam was divided?
In 1975, Vietnam was divided into two areas, in the North Vietnam and the South Vietnam. And
your country was colonized by what country?
French.
French,
Yeah.
right. And Vietnam War started from 1955.
1955.
55 and ended
1975.
75. 20 years Vietnam had the reunification war, right? Vietnam was divided by the what line?
17 line.
17
Yes.
degrees
Yeah.
Celsius. And Korea was divided 38th parallel. And India was divided? No? After 1945?
It was after 1947. After 1947, India was divided into India, and then we had Pakistan and then West Pakistan.
For what reason?
Religious issues.
Religion. Pakistan is what religion?
Mostly Muslims,
Islam.
Islam religion,
And
Hindu.
India,
India was like more of a
Hindi.
Hindu religion.
Right. What about Indonesia? Anybody from Indonesia? Tell me about East Timor. India was divided, never divided.
So Timor-Leste, the East Timor separated itself from Indonesia from the 1970, I guess. Mm-hmm.
And after colonialism of 19th century, after Second World War, that's from 1945, there was the decolonization period in Asia. And in the meantime, they divided North and South, Korea, North and South. Like in Vietnam, the North Korea, Soviet Union, Russians came down. Russian soldiers marched into North Korea and north of 38th parallel. And the South, the American soldiers marched in. That's how we are divided. So, my preacher father moved to North Korea, and the communist government was established, and communism in the North, they oppressed the Korean Christians. And my father was again persecuted by the North Korean communist government. And like in Vietnam, 1955, they started the war between the North and South. That's a liberation war against the French. But in Korea, 1950, June 25, the war started. And North Korean communist soldiers marched down to the south. And I was 19 years old, and we dug the ground underneath my house floor. And one day, my father was kidnapped by the North Korean communist soldiers, so we didn't know where he went. And one day, after terrible bombing of Pyongyang, North Korea, I came out to have some fresh air, and I was caught by the North Korean army, and I was on the truck and went to army camp. Line was so long, waiting for the physical examination. Finally, my turn came. I entered a small room where a medical doctor was sitting. And this medical doctor was looking at me. Hey, you are sick. Me sick? No, I'm not sick. And then, I should have said sick, so that I don't have to go to army. And he said, no, you are very, very sick. You cannot go to army. Me? Sick? And then he wrote the certificate. This man is not qualified to go to army. He is a sick person. He failed the physical examination. And then he put down the certificate and the chart. Hey, you go home with this. Me? I'm not sick. How come this medical doctor told me to go home? And I was coming out, and I couldn't say anything. I should have said thank you or something, but I just couldn't say anything because I was so flabbergasted. I didn't know what to say. And it came out, and the waiting line was so long. I was walking down toward the gate, and I heard a voice, "Brother? Brother? Who is calling me brother?" I looked back. There was standing my younger brother, who is only 17 years old. He was standing there. And he grabbed my hand. "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going home." "How come you're going home?" "See, I'm disqualified to go to army. I'm a sick person." "You sick?" And then he held my hands. "Brother, you should not go to army." He said, I'm going. Goodbye." That was the last words we exchanged. And until today, some 70 years, we have not heard anything about his whereabouts. And then when I came home, the radio was saying that North Korean army is invading South Korea, and we are going to occupy Busan pretty soon, and we are going to unify whole Korea. 만세, fura, and so on. In the meantime, American general MacArthur landed in Incheon, and in September 20-something came to occupy Seoul, and then marched against Pyongyang. And in October, the Korean Army and the U.S. Army came to Pyongyang to liberate Pyongyang people. In the meantime, we will welcome American soldiers and Korean soldiers and so on and so forth. But we had to try to find whereabouts my father. My father was kidnapped by the North Korean soldiers, and we didn't know where he was. And after 2 weeks search of my father, we found his body lying down with the 4 other Christian ministers on the riverbank of Pyongyang. I rushed down to the river and grabbed my father's dead body with the blood all over and the bullet wounds all over his body. And after that, we buried my father's behind his church in Pyongyang and got on the refugee train and came to Seoul and then went down to Busan. And I decided to revenge my father's death against the North Korean communists and joined the Korean Navy. That's when I was 23 years old. Anybody 23 years old? I was in the Korean Navy like that. And then, so Korea became the country that is torn by the war. In 1953, tomorrow, this is a very historical day. Tomorrow, July 27, 1953, North Korean, the South Korean Army, and the U.S. Army, and the Chinese Army, 4 countries signed the agreement of ceasefire, no more war. We call it armistice. Since 1953, July 27, that's tomorrow. For how many years? We are just put down guns, and it was a ceasefire, just arresting the war. The war has not ended. And we didn't know. We hated North Koreans. North Koreans hated South Koreans, and Koreans actual situation of war. That was Korea. Under this kind of situation, North Korean people are starving, South Koreans are growing rich, and they don't want to have unification. They still hate each other. It's a country of hatred and anger and death and revenge and so on. And 1918, just last year, the left is the North Korean chief, Kim Jong-un, and that one is South Korean President Moon. They met so many times in Pyongyang, Panmunjom, and Baekdusan, the North Korean beautiful mountain bordering China and North Korea. And just last month, the 30th of June, American President Trump, for the first time in the Korean War time, the first time American president came to that cement block is the line dividing North and South Korea. That's a DMZ. That's DMZ. They shook hands. And then South Korean president and American and North Korean, they all met together. Grandpa's dream, what is my dream? My dream. When the border is open and a train, we can go to North Korea by train from Seoul Station to Pyongyang. I want to get on the train with grandchildren and go to visit my father's graveyard and have a memorial service. That is the sign. That is a new history of unification, peace on the Korean Peninsula. And to meet North Korean young people and hug, and we all pray for peace. Before my time, before I die, I want to go back to my homeland, North Korea. That is peace. That means peace. That means unification. That means peace on the Korean Peninsula. I hope we will recite the prayers, peace prayers of Saint Francis of Assisi. Would you all please stand up and recite this all together?
Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, forgiveness. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is division, unity. And when there is war, peace. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in forgiving that we are forgiven, and it's in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. So. You know, he is the living history of Korean history. And it is always very moving and touching to your story. I am sorry that we only have 1 hour to listen to you, to cut him because of our next session. So I hope that you will live a long, long time, and that unification of Korea will come soon, so that your dream will come true for all of us. Thank you.